Welcome to Raven Talk, the official podcast of the Raven Tribe. The Raven Tribe is a home for warriors on the path, and is dedicated to training warriors for the battlefield of life. Visit us on the web at theraventribe.com, where you can learn more information on membership, warrior training, as well as links to our official YouTube channel, Facebook group, apparel store, and our official bookstore, Marshall Books. Welcome back, Tribe. We're here today with special guest David Harris and special guest co-host Hanjiro. Mr. Harris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Great. Well, sir, I want to welcome you to the show, and for the benefit of the audience at home, I'd like to ask you to give us a brief background of your training in the martial arts and in the healing arts that have brought you up to your this current point in your career today.
Okay, well, I've studied martial arts for a little over 35 years, and so I go back to like the early 80s and pretty much predominantly studied Japanese styles because that was pretty much all there was back then, like judo and karate, jiu-jitsu, and as my career in that stuff evolved, I got more into internal martial arts like kung fu, and was able to train with some really great people. I was just really blessed to work with some of what I consider to be the best in the world. And as a result, I was taken under their wing, several of them, and became the protege and inherited their styles. And then later went on to integrate these things together and found my own style. And in that style, there was a lot of healing techniques, a lot of martial arts healing techniques, and a lot of the old villages and stuff in China, Korea. The martial arts expert in the village would also be like the healer, the doctor. And so there was a lot of these techniques that I found great benefit in when I was studying with my grandmaster at the time. And for about 8 years, I interned with him in working on all kinds of different sports-related problems and chronic illness problems. But essentially, it all comes down to the flow of blood and qi. And then once you get that balanced out, the symptoms and stuff have a tendency to taper off. So after studying martial arts for like 20 years, and then starting to really, work on this healing aspect of it, I felt that that's really hard for people to go through a whole lifetime of study to then start to work on this type of thing. So I took all the techniques that I learned and I put them together in a system, and I started applying them to more what we consider regular health issues that people would have. And I developed a style called Shun Shen Tao that has no combative art to it, but it's only the Qigong, Shengong, Neigong, Huajing styles of the system that only deal with the healing part. And then I took those techniques and then I distilled them down and extrapolated the principles that made them work and presented the format in such a way to make it safe, because some of these things can be very dangerous. So everything in Shun Shen Tao is safe, it's effective, it has a very high percentage of success rate whenever it's used. But I wanted people to, I felt that the healing arts were really people's birthright, that as a human being, there are just certain God-given, inalienable things that you need to have or you need to know. And one of those things is how to help out yourself and how to help out your fellow man. And I don't think that they should have had to go through all of the training and the education that I went through to be able to do these things or have these abilities. And so this is why I created this particular style of martial art.
Mr. Harris, Hanjiro here. It's interesting that your past leading you in order to do this system that you just described, going from a martial path, combative path, to a non-combative system with health benefits is something that is not unique, but it has been done by a good many great people. Lore Ueshiba, Yashif, a Chinese gentleman. I can't pronounce his name at the moment, but he did a branch of Yishan, internal art that's very focused on small motor movements that helps mostly large joint and back issues. Was there one kind of art or one kind of person that you modeled this or looked at as an inspiration?
Well, I didn't really know a lot about it until it started getting, taught to me. I was pulled aside by my grandmaster at the time, the Grandmaster Charles Labor, and he wanted a protege to take over the system. And he says, you have a mastery in Demok, acupoint striking and this kind of thing, and you're one of the top candidates that I want to interview for Qigong and Qigong practice. And where I'd heard of these things, these concepts were like legendary or very esoteric to me, because no one at the time was ever really seen to be able to put these things into a concept where it's tangible or it's provable. It's all about theory. And the truth is that it's not a theory. It's very much a fact. And changing the amplitude of the qi, like increasing the cycles of qi, can make the body harder. It can make the body generate more power. And of course, there's biomechanical ways of generating more power. Some biomechanics movements are better than other movements for generating certain types of power. But there's an underlying principle of the qi and then the Shen, which is the spiritual energy of the body. And with certain exercises, these energies can be cultivated, built upon, and then there are techniques of being able to release this power. And it's not something where you have to breathe for 5 minutes and now you can throw the punch. The energy should be instantaneously available and ready in the body. So the second that someone makes a move, the energy is right there, and it helps to make you very resistant to physical kinetic force, kicks, punches. I've had several people, in demonstration, kick or punch me as hard as they can, and they actually, some of them have broken a hand or a foot in doing so, and not even hitting, a hard target like the cranium. Punching or kicking right in the solar plexus, or the groin, or the throat. So the energy can change so much, and there's such a misconception out there. There's not a real misconception. There's like virtually no conception other than they have a concept that this is a thing, and we really don't know about it. So I've kind of dedicated my life in the last 15 years or so to the study of it, and I've come up with some superb ways of demonstrating these abilities, or what can be done. I'll pull people out of the audience, for example, and I'll use a phone book, and I'll have the person hold the phone book, and the phone book, of course, can absorb most of the physical impact from a moderate punch. And so then I can manipulate that person's energetic structure, and it will cause their muscles and their fascia and tendons to change shape. And when it does, you can hit them as hard as you want, and the body will suffocate or snuff the energy, the kinetic force. And so I've had 75-year-old ladies get up and take a full punch to the stomach with no previous martial arts experience, because instead of taking 5 years, for example, to develop Iron Shirt, practicing certain exercises over a long period of time, and then finally getting able to be able to learn how to do the Iron Shirt once the amplitude of the qi gets high enough. I've developed ways of manipulating the energy in the body to amp it up, kind of like putting lightning in a bottle and then corking it. And it changes their strength, it changes their emotion, their mood. It makes them much more resistant to damage. I've had many people that I've worked with, and they've fallen or they've been in car accidents, and they absolutely swear to the fact that if they would not have had this, what we call iron body qigong protection, that they would have been severely damaged.
So, Mr. Harris, that leads into kind of the next range of this topic here is your experience with people dealing with injuries. So you're talking a little bit about protection, preventative protection, but what about restorative practices? You have experience dealing with people who have injuries and helping them. Are you doing this from just a musculoskeletal type of way, or are you also using energy, or is this an even split 50-50? How does that work?
Well, percentage-wise, I don't know. I kind of use the right tool for the job, and we have many, many tools. Our system of healing and restoration is very vast, but it essentially comes down to it's either a musculoskeletal soft tissue issue, or it's a not enough blood flow issue, or it's not enough chi flow issue. So we have many techniques. Most of the time what I find with people, especially martial artists, because martial artists snap back really quick. I go to lots of different events, and I help people, whoever wants to be helped. And so as a result, I get a lot of people come up to me at events. And in fact, there was one event where I was there for like 3 days, and I think I did like over 300 people. I just one right after the next, with all kinds of issues. But we have many different techniques, but most of the thing that I find is that the body uses a fluid system to sweep and clean waste products out of itself. And so there's the lymph system, but there's also the meridian system. And so when the meridian gets congested, the muscles that the electricity that should be flowing through that channel, that it should be irrigating, and the chi excites the blood. It invigorates the blood, makes it move. And so if there's no chi flow in the meridian due to fluid obstruction, then the muscle will become ischemic, it'll be blood deficient, it will contract, and so then they feel pain. There was a gentleman who was a good friend of mine who I ran into at the Shenzhen Martial Arts Hall of Honors a couple weekends ago, and he goes all over the world, and he said, hey, would you mind looking at my shoulder? And I took a look at it, and the blockage was not in the shoulder, but it was in like the middle of the bicep. But he's feeling the pain in the shoulder, and he thinks he did something to the shoulder. Well, using chi to dissolve the blockage in approximately 60 seconds, the meridian opened up, and the pain in the shoulder went away. And he got very dizzy, which is unusual, which means that it's probably pathogenic chi. There's some kind of infection or something in the channel, and so it knocked his adrenal function down and made him very dizzy, and so he almost had to sit down for a minute, but he sucked it up and he was okay. And we have techniques, for example, if he's not okay, we can stimulate or boost the chi to the kidneys and heart, and it'll balance that out, so he will be okay.
Now, Mr. Harris, I'm curious, the way that I was introduced to your name was through John Landry, and John told me that he had suffered a back injury. I was talking to John about this because I also suffered a back injury, and we were talking about it, and he, started to, sing the praises of your approach because he said that you really helped him to be able to get back into, the state he was in before his injury. I wanted to ask you, in your experience with the people that you help treat, is there a limit to the type of damage that you can help to restore? Where have you found that your technique falls as far as the type of injury or the extent of an injury?
Well, there's not one screwdriver for all screws, but for the most part, I've never really seen an injury that we couldn't help restore. And I've seen tendons torn away. I've seen muscles torn away. I've seen shoulders completely torn up. I've seen, in fact, here's a good example. And I can't say I haven't worked on everything under the sun, but I've worked on probably over 18,000 people in my in my career so far, and so I've seen a lot of stuff. But I can't say that I've seen it all. But emergency stuff, we have lots of emergency techniques. But I'll give you one quick story. There was a student of mine who was training with another student of mine, and they were practicing techniques of knee buckling. And so they would come in and they put pressure on the knee, and they had an accident, and he pushed on the knee too much, and the gentleman's knee came completely dislocated, turned 180 degrees, and so from the knee down, his foot was completely on backwards. And so he fell over in the corner, and this is just another day in paradise. There's always some kind of crisis that's going on. So my tough fighters who normally, they laugh at the sight of blood, no problem. They saw this dislocated joint, and their stomachs were kind of turning. So I'm like, no problem, help me roll him over. So we roll him over, and I start doing our technique called Neigong Wajing for physical. And later I'll tell you where you can go. You can learn these techniques for yourself. I'll put them all up for free online so people can use them at their discretion. But it took me about 35 minutes of doing this technique on and off to get the knee to turn itself. And it turned all by itself all the way back around 180 degrees. And then it pulled back up into the joint. Then it took about another 10 minutes to get it to seat pretty good. Now, you got to understand that it's been very badly traumatized. Even though it's back together again, it's still going to be a little sore. But he walked out of the dojo under his own power. He had a very, very slight limp. If you were looking for it, you could notice it. But 3 days later, he competed in a tournament where he did a jumping, flying axe kick with that same leg and broke 8 concrete slabs and won first place at the tournament.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
Mr. Harris, let me ask you, your technique, and I'm not terribly familiar with a lot of the healing techniques that come out of some of the martial arts. Is it something akin to Oriental medicine? I mean, where's the philosophy or the underlying principles of how to diagnose and treat, different ailments? Where is it coming from? What's the background and the framework for that?
Well, martial arts science has its own philosophy of that, and you can find a lot of this information in what's called Chinese medical Qigong. And there's a brilliant grandmaster, Jerry Allen Johnson, who's documented a lot of this traditional stuff. And I was fortunate enough to train under people who knew this, and there weren't books and things like that when I came through. But Grandmaster Johnson has taken great time, I'm sure, to write huge books about these phenomenon and how to do them on like a mastery and doctorate level. And it's so if you want to know more about that kind of thing, it's like, where is there a written understanding of this and the science behind it? I would definitely recommend a book called Chinese Medical Qigong, spelled Qigong, a comprehensive clinical text. And so when I had graduated from my teacher, a couple years later, that book came out, and I refer to it now as like the pocket edition of what we do, because it's actually quite huge. It's like maybe 1,200 pages long. And then he expanded it into 5 volumes. And it's great to show people in what I do, okay, look, I'm not crazy. This is how this works. And so here, you can read that. And so I keep the books at my clinic. So in case anyone needs an understanding or they want to learn more about it, they can look at the books while they're there.
Now, sir, you mentioned that your clinic. Are you licensed to practice this method? Is this something that's standardized or even a licensed profession here in the United States?
Well, if you're gonna practice it, well, I can't speak for every state because every state has different regulations on things. Like in Oklahoma, I don't think they have any kind of regulation at all. But in Florida, I'm a massage therapist, and so I have a license to do soft tissue manipulation and energy work, and that encompasses the embodiment of what it is that we do. So I have a massage therapy clinic where we do such things, work on the meridians, work on the soft tissues of the body, and so yes, so I'm a licensed therapist. To my understanding, and I'm not an attorney, but I'll throw this out there for you. As long as you're not charging money for helping people, then you're not a professional. And so, of course, there's always legal liabilities on things. But if someone has a headache and you ask them if you want to help them out with the headache, or they want some help with the headache, you could push certain points on their body if they're okay with that to help them. Now that's okay as long as they're okay with it and you're okay with it. But you can't charge them for that service unless you're licensed by the state to do something of that nature.
And Mr. Harris, let me ask you this, and please don't take any offense to this. I don't mean this in any negative way, but why don't we know more about this? I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now that would be very skeptical and may...
Oh, no, I take no offense to it. I completely understand. I think it's an excellent question, and there's a very good reason for that. This is some of the highest levels of martial arts. When I came through and I was training, I think the longest degree I held was like 4th degree, and I was there for many years. And because I did not see the point in going any higher than that. I was trying to work on developing my own particular fighting style technique, and I just didn't see that there was any importance to pursuing a higher level education. And the truth is, when you're like 4th, 5th degree, that's kind of like your last degrees of combat stuff. And then when you start to get in like 6th, 7th, this is more like understanding acupoints, meridians, and the martial science aspect of healing. And so in what I do, you have to go and you have to study with the guy, or the woman. I've definitely had a couple of incredible women that have taught me some incredible things. But my thing is, I go see the person who knows about those things, and then I dedicate everything that I have to learning their philosophy. And once I've learned it and I've mastered it, then I try to improve upon it. But you have to understand it first. And I will say that it's some of the darndest stuff to understand when you first get started. It took me 2 months to learn a punch one time, and I was very distraught of that, since I pick up like whole styles of black belt in 6 months to a year, depending on how complicated it is. And so 2 months to learn a punch was just incredible. But the mechanics were like nothing I'd ever seen. In fact, the more I knew, the harder it was to let those things go. Anyway, back to your question, why nobody sees this is because, like my teacher told me, the world is not ready for this, and people are not ready for this. They are fearful, okay, and they will shun you, and so you must stay within your group, and these techniques are what make you, and if anyone else knows these techniques, then it lessens your prestige as being the grandmaster of the system. And I honored my teacher, but once I was installed as the grandmaster of the system, I decided that it's an ego-based statement. And I believe that it's people's right to know this. And so I am coming out of the shadows with it, so to speak. There's been a lot of people in martial arts over the last 20 or 30 years who stood up and put things out that the martial arts community is not happy about. And so as a result, in fact, I think on your Facebook channel earlier this evening, I looked at it and I saw a clip for the new Bruce Lee movie that's coming out. And that's kind of what his whole thing was about. He was trying to be the future. He was trying to break the mold. And traditionalism did not appreciate that. And I think that's the premise of the whole movie. And so I'm trying to change this from being hidden and secretive and, oh, you're the high mucky muck guy if you know this technique. You know, if you can take a broken bone and you can weld it back together again, okay, that's why you're the Grand Master. When the reality is, I taught many people over the phone how to do that technique, and they can do it in like 5 minutes. You know, depending, of course, on the severity of the break. But, I mean, these things are documented. So, you know, there may be people who are skeptical about these things, but the bottom line is that these things are easily duplicatable. So it's not in fact, I went down to Sarasota at one point in time and did a lecture on Qigong for professional practitioners. And there was a doctor in the area who had a patient who had broken the tibia and fibula bone, so your shin bone and then the bone that's behind it. And so it was a clean break. They verified it on X-ray. And then he says, oh, you know what? You're in luck today because Grandmaster Harris is in Sarasota, and I've always wanted to see this. And so I've heard about it. I've heard him talk about it, and this will be a great test case. And so he got the lady friend to drive her there, and he met them there. And he called me first to make sure it was okay, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And so I would say that it took about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour 10 to get it good. But so I demonstrated before we started that I could take her foot and move it to the side, and her leg stayed there, but her foot came across. So obviously the bone is not connected. And they wheeled her in, I think, in a wheelchair, if I remember correctly. And so, like I said, it took me about an hour, we'll say, to get it all back together again. And so when she left, she still didn't want to put weight on it. But I was able to convince her to go ahead and try because I need to know where it still hurts at. And she put pressure on it. It did not hurt. She was able to walk back to the car. And then she was I told her to stay off of it for 3 days because it takes about 3 days for the bone to solidify up real good. So you don't want it to come undone. But like the next day or two, she actually went for a mile-long walk on the beach on uneven sand, which is really, really bad to do because it could possibly come undone. Putting that kind of stress on it so early, but it did not. And so as a result, that whole experience became like a legend there in Sarasota because there was about maybe 25, 30 people that saw it, and they knew the doctor, they knew the lady, they're a relatively tight-knit community. But these things, although they sound miraculous, and they're total miracles of God. But they're reproducible, they're doable. Anybody can do them with just a little bit of practice. And it's just a matter of having enough faith to try it, to do it. And so I do run into skeptics from time to time, not so much anymore because everybody's seen me do something to where they get it. But I do run into skeptics from time to time, and usually how I deal with that is I show them how to do something and then let them do it as opposed to arguing with them. Because there's no sense in arguing about it when we could be doing something. So, they may have a friend. Their friend may have a neck problem. Okay, so do this energy technique. Now, how's your friend doing? His friend says, oh man, my neck's starting to feel kind of hot and tingly. And in a few minutes, the pain stops. And so I didn't do anything. Okay, the skeptical guy did it. And so now, is he a fraud or is he weird? So, one of my teachers used to describe that as the have a beer philosophy. He was in college for pre-med, and he's like, there were these people having a party next door, and they were being loud, and he was trying to study, And he's like, you know what? That's it. I'm going over there and I'm punching people out. And so he gets up and he walks out and he bangs on the door, and the guy opens the door and he says, hey, look, you guys are being way too loud. You're not being respectful of other people in this dorm. And the guy says, hey, you know what? We're real sorry, buddy. Totally apologize. Tell you what, why don't you come in and have a beer, sit down and tell us all about it. And so they brought him in. He sat down and he had a beer, and he realized something. All of a sudden, he wasn't angry anymore because he had become part of events. And what he was really upset about was the fact that he wasn't invited to the party, which had not occurred to him previous. And so these patterns where people pick him up and they say, oh, I'm skeptical. Well, there's a lot of history around the term skepticism anyway. It's actually a Greek doctrine that states that there are no such things as facts, so therefore nothing actually exists. And this is the whole premise of their school. Well, it's kind of hard to debate somebody who doesn't believe anything's real and there are no such thing as facts. And people, when they say that, like, I'm skeptical, they bring that energy forward, and it helps to close their mind. So instead of trying to attack their fortified mind with a new, fresh idea, I give them some hands-on opportunity to see for themselves. And so I'm not their adversary. Okay, I'm their friend, and I'm here to help, or not. Just depends on what capacity that they would like to have that help. Like Dr. Landry, for example, he's a great man, a very, very physically active man. He's something else. And he was in a lot of pain when we first met. If I remember correctly, he couldn't hardly even walk on that leg. There was something wrong with the knee, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty severe. And they were saying, I think, that even surgery, he was going to be very limited in his ability, plus it was going to take months and months to recover, maybe even a year or more. So he was not really happy with the prognosis that they had given him. So when a mutual friend of ours, Grandmaster John Inger, who's the president of Shenzhen Martial Arts University, when he introduced us, I said, look, no problem. I'll do everything I can do, and we'll get it done as fast as possible. And so I used one of my very powerful, kind of discomforting techniques, but he took it. He was tough, and so it probably took about 5 minutes. I'll just be generous and say 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, I was able to get it. Well, he was able to run up and down the hallway, which is probably like 50 yards each way. And so he ran quite a distance on it with no pain. And then once that was the case, I said, well, let's check it for elevation. And so we took a chair and had him step up and down in the chair many times to put not only acute tension on it, but tension over endurance, long term. And again, there was no pain, and so he was very happy with the progress we had made in just the 10 minutes. And so then he asked if I could do something for his back, and I believe he had some kind of disc problem where he was in severe pain in the back. And we were able to help him in maybe like 2 or 3 minutes with that. And to my knowledge, he's been great with those things ever since then, and that was probably about 5 years ago. Now, does everything happen that miraculously fast? No, not everything. It just depends on, like, one, he was in very good physical condition, and that helps a lot. That goes back to what I was saying before. Martial artists, they take to this very quickly because they're usually in pretty good shape to begin with. So if you work on them, it doesn't take much, even if it seems to be a very severe injury, for their body to heal. Some people who, for example, just off the cuff, I'd say that Dr. Landry is probably, 5'6" and like 150 pounds. If he was 5'6" and 300 pounds and played PlayStation all day long, well, then it might have taken 30 minutes. So it just depends on many different factors But if they're in any kind of remotely good shape, that certainly does help the speed of things. And some things they take longer. They take, 4, 5, 6 sessions, depending upon external factors. And so there's a variance in things that people don't take into account when they ask these questions, and that's the only problem that I see that people typically have when asking these things. Like, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, can you fix this problem? Well, this problem could range from looking like a regular person with virtually no symptoms to being blind and in a wheelchair. It's like, an example of that might be, what is that? Diabetes. You could take diabetes, for example. And that's another thing. I don't treat medical conditions. That's not what I do. I balance the energy of the body. So I just give you like a little disclaimer there. I absolutely do not treat medical conditions. But let's take that as a theoretical discussion. Somebody could have a label of diabetes, and they could be perfectly fine, and it could be controlled with diet and exercise. Then other people need to be on insulin. Some people have a pump, surgically implanted in their body that pumps insulin in there when they push a button. Some people have to lose feet or leg amputation due to the severity of it. So there's a big spread there of, somebody goes up and goes, hey man, can you cure my diabetes? Well, we don't treat medical problems. We do massage, but you get where I'm coming from, I think.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Harris, let me ask you this. I mean, it sounds like you've had very good success with your approach. My questions, actually, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, are there other people that are able to do these types of things at the level that you're doing them? And what are your thoughts as far as getting this information out to the public? Would you like to see this more formalized, the way massage therapy or Rolfing, chiropractic medicine, that type of organization to this approach, where it eventually becomes something that's recognized and licensed? Or do you think it should remain in the realm of martial arts practitioners?
Wow, all those are really good questions, and those are things that I've looked at for many, many years. And what I feel is that, because my opinion on that has changed over time. One thing is there's something for everyone at the table. There are techniques that do absolutely miraculous stuff for people who are lay people, and they can build up these techniques and build up these skills, and it doesn't take long. Like, for example, let me just to give you an example. There's one technique that people can learn in a 30-minute video clip that I have on YouTube that can erase emotional trauma from a person's energy. It can just erase it. I've had people, I'll tell you a quick story on that, but they can learn this technique in 30 minutes and be that devastating with it. Well, let me tell you this story about a friend of mine who, he had never done the technique before. He had only seen me do it, and I explained it to him one time for about 2 minutes. And I said, you can totally do it now. This is how you do it. You just do the technique, and it'll work. And so, and this is the emotional clearing technique. It's called Neigong Wajing for emotional clearing. And he had a neighbor come to his house who their daughter had been kidnapped and held for, I want to say, 3 or 4 days, and raped by multiple people over this period of 3 or 4 days, until she finally escaped and I guess got to the cops. And then she was fresh off the boat. I mean, she had gotten just right from that experience. The cops got her. They gave her whatever assistance she needed. They brought her home, and from home they immediately went to my friend. Okay, when they did that, he said, "Okay, I'm going to do this technique," and he does this technique with her for 15, 20 minutes, something to that effect. Now, she was very apprehensive about being around anybody, and she did not know this guy at all. but he's like, look, if you just sit here, I'm not going to touch you or anything, just going to do this technique with you. In 20 minutes, she got up, she shed some tears, she hugged him, and just like that, all her pain and suffering from the last 3 or 4 days, emotionally and mentally, was gone. And she could go back and face the world again. She was put back together. She was put back whole. And this was the first time he had ever done it. And this is not an uncommon thing. This is pretty much the standard of how that particular technique works. It can virtually eliminate any type of emotional stress, mental stress, regardless of how solidly it's rooted. Like I always say, the symptoms are no indication of how difficult the problem is going to be to fix. The symptoms can be very acute, like the whole time he was working on her, she was crying, and then in 20 minutes, all of a sudden, it stopped. And just like that, she's back to normal. She went on to have, a full life, and that was probably 9 years ago.
So the individual that was able to do this for her, is he an example of somebody that pursued the study of this method, to a higher level, or did he just learn what he needed to be able to help that young lady as more of an isolated exercise?
Well, he was at the time he was looking to study, and this was kind of like the first thing he had learned and like the first person that he had used any of this type of stuff on. And so in Shun Shen Tao, the techniques are taken from high-level techniques, but they're simplified and distilled down so that you can get like that high-level result without having to have any experience, okay, or any training to speak of other than just the little bit of training that's in the videos. Now, of course, practicing is going to make you better. It's going to make you more intuitive. It's going to open your mind and your energy to be able to see, and that makes you more effective. But the truth of the matter is that the techniques work all by themselves. And like, for example, I see many, many people who, for many, many years, who were very skeptical about these things. And so that's one of the first things that I would do with them. I had a guy one time who came in and he had some type of liver distress, some kind of liver-related problem. And the emotion that dominates the liver is anger. And many times if you can clean up the anger, the problem with the liver can also improve. And so he says, I'm not really sure I believe in any of this stuff. I said, well, that's fine. Don't worry about that. That has nothing to do with whether or not we're going to be able to help you out. And he says, well, I really don't want to do any acupressure stuff on my liver or anything. What can you show me to tell me that this is going to work for me? And so let me give you a little demonstration. And so knowing that it was a liver thing and that we could possibly deal with it through emotional clearing, I said, do you have anything that in your life that you wish you could just kind of get rid of it? You could wipe it out. And he says, well, I hate dogs. Okay, you hate dogs. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the most, how bad would you say you hate dogs? Well, like a 5, maybe a 6. And so I said, okay. And I did this technique with him and waited for about 60 seconds. And I said, tell me about this whole dog hating thing. And he's like, I hate my dad. I'm like, okay. What number would you put to that? He says, oh, it's a easy 10. Easy 10. Okay. And so did the technique again, waited a minute. And then I said, so tell me about this whole dog hating thing. And so he broke down and started crying, and he was just emotionally just distraught. So I started doing the technique again because that helps to speed that up. Sometimes they have a strong emotional release if they've been suppressing things. And so if you do the technique again, it kind of like incredibly speeds it up by like 90% or more. So he said, when I was a kid, I had this dog, and my father said we couldn't keep it, and because we couldn't keep it, he had to get rid of it, and I love that dog, and I've always hated him because of it. And so you can see here the link that he has made in the experience. He was young. Okay, he lost his dog that he loved. His father was the one who had to get rid of the dog, so he hated his father for the act. But he really loved his father. So who was the culprit? The dog. The dog made me love it. And so I hate dogs. I never want to have another dog because I had this horrible experience. And so after clearing that out of his energy, he was much better. And he decided not to do a session, and that was fine. And what I heard though later, that his problem with his liver had gone away. And so it showed me that, very definitively, although I already knew this, that emotions can play a big part. He had been suppressing this anger for like 20 years. And so in doing that, we could theorize that all the energies and chemicals that should be going to make the liver function and do its thing had been diverted to this subconscious negativity, this subconscious hatred, this subconscious anger. And so once that cleared and let up, the chi flow opened back up again, the blood restored, and his body went back to working like it was supposed to begin with.
Mr. Harris, the results sound amazing, and I really do wish you the best of luck in continuing to promote this and share it with the people that as you stated, earlier, that need it. If people are interested in reaching out to you and learning more about your method, if they want to do some serious instructions, is it only available by in-person instruction, or are you putting these things down into DVDs or books, these techniques so that people can learn them?
I do have about 50 or 60 DVDs, but the vast majority of them are up online. At least the vast majority of the healing ones. The martial art ones I've kind of ruled are kind of too dangerous to be not supervised, and to just put out there. But the healing ones, virtually all of them are up online on YouTube. And if you just go to YouTube and type in Grandmaster David Harris, you'll see my channel pop up, and it's a GM of Shun Tao. And you'll see that there's about 95 video clips that show you how to do anything from biomechanical Qigong, where it's just posturing and whole, like kind of bone welding type techniques, that's up there. Emotional clearing, physical clearing, spiritual techniques that help to balance the body. I mean, even though we've talked for quite a while, we haven't even scratched the surface of what can be done and what we do every day and how we integrate that into our Kung Fu style. But to kind of go back to the question before, I don't think I totally answered it, and it was, who do I want to see do this? I want to see a version out there, which is what I put up on the internet, for anybody to go and learn these things and help your friends and family. Okay, please, you got to be. Martial arts trains us to be self-sufficient, to be strong, and this is a piece of that pie. No matter how big or small that slice is, if you don't have that slice, you're not a whole pie. And so I decided to put it out there against a lot of adversity. And so I put it out there for anybody to come and try it. Okay, just try it, use it, play with it. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work, right? So what do you got to lose? It's not like it costs any money. So, but there's a higher skill level version of it that is more for like professional therapists who you do need kind of an education of meridian theory and Chinese medicine and basic anatomy and physiology. And I do teach classes on that, and I have continuing education classes that I used to do that I stopped doing, but we're going to be doing that again this year coming up. So I just got to finish the process. But so we have a layman version, we have a professional therapy version, and I actually go all over the country, teaching these techniques to doctors of all kinds, to therapists of all kinds, and to lay people. So there's really something for everyone. But you don't have to know a single thing. You can go right to the channel. You can start practicing it today, and you can start getting some results. But I recommend, because the results are so incontestable, to start with the emotional clearing video, because that's something that everybody's got emotional stress, whether they want to admit it or not. And so here's a great technique that you can learn and build up some confidence in your skills and abilities. And once you see it work, then you can add stuff to it in any order that you want. Any technique that kind of jumps out at you, you can add it to what you're already doing.
Well, sir, I want to thank you for being on the show with us today. It was fascinating. I feel like we only just scratched the surface. This has obviously been a very long pursuit for you to be able to reach this level of understanding in the martial arts. If you're open to it, I'd love to invite you on to have a second conversation regarding, this aspect of the martial arts.
I would be honored to do it. Happy to help, and I want to see everybody do the best that they can do, and I know that they can get a lot of help from this kind of thing. And so if there's anything that I can do for you guys or your show, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. And if you want to set up maybe even some kind of demonstration, maybe because where are you guys out of?
We're located in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't get to Chicago too terribly much, and so I used to tour through there, but it's not too far from some of the places that I do tour locally. And so maybe at some point in time I could swing by and help you with your back stuff.
It sounds like a plan, for sure. Well, sir, thank you again, and I want to just extend my gratitude to you for being on the show. It was fascinating, and like I said, I feel like we only were able to scratch the surface. I'd like to definitely get you on again, and we can discuss this, to a little bit of a deeper level. Before we wrap up, can I ask you to please let the audience know where they can reach you? I know you gave the information about the YouTube, but what about your website? If people want to find you on the net, or if they want to get out to your clinic locally in Florida, where can they find you?
Well, my clinic in Florida, I've got two places that I work out of. One is my place in Polk City, Florida, and it's a Tai Chong School of Massage and Body Work, and that's TAICHONG, and School of Body Work and Massage. That's in Polk City, Florida. And then I also work in Tampa at another facility called Soho Wellness, and they specialize in a lot of different modalities, and we're trying to put together a really great program for people in there to kind of spread out. As far as contacting me, probably the best way to contact me would be through email. And so I could give you my email address, and that's getjustice@justice.com. And it's spelled just how it sounds, getjustice@justice.com.
Excellent, sir. Well, thank you again for being on, and like I said, we hope to have you back on in the very near future. Have a good one, sir.
Oh, thank you. You too, sir. Goodbye.